Hello my friends. So it's been a while. It's been like 3 months and I'm so sorry. I've got something that I absolutely need to tell you, which is quite honestly the most horrific and also the funniest thing that has ever taken place in my life, and I'm desperate to tell you, but before I do I figured I would acknowledge where I am. So I'm still in Wellington. I'm just around the corner from where I live in the CBD in a place called Oriental Bay. I think I filmed this place once before, but at night when the sun was setting. But this is Oriental Bay in the daytime. I've told my closest friends this story. I've also told my mum. My mum, when I told my mum this story over the phone, I've never heard her laugh louder. So I'm hoping that you'll enjoy this story too. So I don't know if I told you this, I probably didn't, but when I came over to New Zealand, or when I told my mum that I was going over to New Zealand, she gifted me two things, right? She gifted me a face mask, because of course COVID was already in conversation by this point, and she also gifted me a rape alarm. And despite the fact that I tried reasoning with my mum and say, you know, New Zealand is the safest place in the entire world, and you know, I'm going to be absolutely fine, and I'm a big girl and I'll figure it all out, she was very persistent. And sometimes it's easier to do something than not to do something, right? So I just accepted it, and up until so this took place about a month ago now. So up until a month ago, I genuinely couldn't have told you whereabouts this rape alarm was, because I just threw it in the bottom of my bag or somewhere and I forgot about it. Anyway, I was at work and I was leaving, so it was probably like, I don't know, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, and I got up from my desk, I walked to the lift and I pressed the button, and then behind me there was this guy named Peter. So Peter and I work in completely different departments. Peter, up until this point, Peter and I hadn't really engaged in a conversation at all. Like, not even once. I couldn't even tell you, like, even now I couldn't tell you much about Peter, apart from the fact that I put him in a really uncomfortable situation, but we'll get to that. And he was waiting for the lift behind me, and then, you know, just as people do, we started engaging in a conversation. I was like, sir, have you any plans, blah blah blah. As we were having this conversation, the lift doors opened and we got in, and honestly, I've been so desperate to tell you this story, it's just so stupid. I'm kind of like reliving it right now, and it's making me feel a bit uncomfortable. So before I continue on with this story, I must let you know that this lift is the slowest lift that's ever been in existence. And yeah, so we're travelling from the 6th floor, and I don't know what came over me, but for whatever reason I leant up against the wall of the lift with my backpack on. And then that's when it started. So with this rape alarm, you've got like this prong, right? And you have to like disconnect the prong, and then the alarm goes off. And like some sort of like freak accident, the alarm goes off whilst in a confined space with an employee, a male employee that I've never spoken to before. And initially he's like, oh Jesus, is that the fire alarm? And I, of course, instantly know that it's not, and I know what it is, but, and like in my mind I'm thinking, shall I just lie? Shall I just say, yeah, I think it's a fire alarm, and then just hopefully he won't question it any further. It's awful. Hello. There's like a dog here.
Sorry.
No, not at all. It's great footage. Thank you.
He's going to run your shot.
Like, it's so stupid, and honestly I don't even know how I get myself into this situation, but yeah, I'm questioning whether I should tell him the truth and blah 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 blah, and I opt in that moment to tell him something similar to what I told you, right? So I said, you know, when my mum found out I was going to New Zealand, she gifted me two things, the first being a face mask. I'm not entirely certain whether you can still hear me over the noise of that aeroplane, but we'll give it a go. And yeah, a face mask and a rape alarm. And when I said the word rape alarm in a confined space with a male colleague, I swear to God, I've never seen someone move further, like not only further away from me despite the fact that we're already in a confined like environment, but just move quickly to the other side of the lift. Like he just like pressed himself up against the wall. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. And bear in mind that the ringing of the rape alarm is still going on, and it is intense. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard a rape alarm before, but Jesus Christ, that is loud. Which I suppose is its only purpose, right? But yeah, it's awful. And then by this point we're probably at like floor 4, and then we're going down, so 3, 2, 1, and then the doors open, and he essentially runs out of the lift, okay? And it's awful. And then there's a seating area just outside the lift, so I like put my bag down, I open up my bag, and then of course that makes the alarm like 10 times louder, and then I'm having to find this prong to like put it back in and make it stop. Whilst I'm trying to like fiddle with this, a lady walks through the building and she's like, oh Jesus, is that a fire alarm? And I'm like, can everyone just stop for a second? Like, this is awful. Like, not for one moment did I think, you know what, I know how to make an impression at work. It's just horrific, and this is my life. And then I managed to make it stop, and then I essentially run after Peter to, you know, try and diffuse the situation. But how could you possibly, like, the man's at this point probably traumatized, and like I engage in like a non-conversation, like I'm so sorry about that, and you know, have a nice evening, and blah 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 blah, trying to make the whole interaction as normal as I possibly can, despite the fact that no one could make that situation normal. And yeah, that's my story. So a couple of days later, Peter actually came to my desk, just to say hi, presumably. And I was like, hey Peter, like, how's it going? You alright? And he said, well, my ears are still ringing from the rape alarm, and my eyes are still burning from the pepper spray. So at least the guy's got a sense of humour, so it could have been worse. Like, could you imagine like that situation occurring with somebody who just couldn't see the funny side? But yeah, that right there is one of the most harrowing things that has ever happened to me. So yeah, that's my story, and that quite honestly is one of the worst things that has ever happened to me, certainly in a work environment. But yeah, I've only been in the job for what, 6 months now, and that's how I make my mark. I make my mark by setting off a rape alarm in a lift with a male co-worker that I've never spoken to before up until that moment. So yeah, that's my story.